terrible tragedy unfolding in County Donegal, where it's now known at least 9 people have died. Rescuers are searching for survivors after yesterday's explosion at a petrol station. Passengers are being urged to travel by train only if absolutely necessary, as further strikes taking place today. Around 1 in 5 trains running, 40,000 members of the RMT union walking out again in a pay round. An explosion has led to the only bridge connecting Russia to Crimea to collapse. It's a vital route for Moscow to get weapons into Ukraine. And Max Verstappen will start on pole for tomorrow's Japanese Grand Prix and could land the title. He's avoided a grid penalty after a near miss with Lando Norris in qualifying.
LBC News. Weather.
Dry and bright for much of the UK. Plenty of autumnal sunshine, a few showers in parts of Scotland. I'm Adam Barber with a full forecast coming up in 15 minutes.
LBC News. Travel.
Because of the train strike, there are only around 1 in 5 services running across the country today. The advice is to only travel by rail if it's absolutely necessary. There are delays in Kent. The M20 westbound is closed all weekend. That's for roadworks between junction 11 for Hythe and 10 for Ashford South. The A2 in Kent is closed both ways at Dartford Heath because a vehicle has overturned, so there are long delays. In Surrey, there are severe delays on the M25 clockwise. Traffic's being held because of an accident between junction 10 for the A3 and junction 11 for Chertsey. And in Cheshire, the M56 westbound is closed. That's for roadworks between junction 11 for Preston Brook and junction 12 for Runcorn. I'm Dave Goff. Your next update is in 20 minutes here on LBC News.
This is LBC News.
2 minutes past 12. I'll bring you the latest on this explosion at a petrol station in County Donegal in just a moment. 9 people now confirmed to have been killed. The latest to come. First, though, let's bring you the latest on the rail strikes. The RMT union out again today. 1 in 5 trains approximately said to be running. 40,000 members of the RMT, I believe, are walking out in this ongoing row. We can go live to Euston Station in London and join Christian Hugel. That right? Around 40,000 members, Christian?
That is exactly right, Nick. Yeah, and some of those members are stood in front of me now in the sunshine, I'm delighted to say, because goodness me, it's been cold at Euston today. We've finally got some sunshine come out, and the members wear their bright orange tabards and wave their green flags, and a couple holding roses as well at the moment, interestingly. We've been hearing on LBC all day more than 40,000 rail, maritime and transport union members at 15 train operating companies as well as Network Rail striking today. And this is all the row you've been hearing about really throughout the summer. If you're a regular listener to us on LBC or LBC News, you'll have heard about it. It's the row over jobs, pay and working conditions, and a lot of interesting factors within that as well. Things like modernisation of ticket officers, people wanting to save the jobs of ticket office workers and also conductors on train services. These are some of the workers that have been affected by this. As for today, services started later than usual this morning. They are finishing earlier this evening, and as Nick has just said, you are being urged to avoid travelling by train unless absolutely necessary. And that's a message that is getting through, I would say. Euston is usually one of Britain's busiest railway stations. I think this morning until about 10 or 11 o'clock it was almost as quiet as pandemic levels. It's starting to get a little bit busier now, mostly with football fans, but really most people seem to have got the message to not travel by train. Around half of the rail network is closed all day, and the services are only operating between 7:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. Those services starting later tomorrow as well. So if you're thinking everything will be back to normal by tomorrow, it won't be. Do check before you travel, particularly if you're planning a Sunday morning journey. Now, this is the 3rd strike affecting rail services this month. The RMT, TSSA and Drivers' Union ASLEF took action last Saturday. That affected about 90% of services, and ASLEF members walked out on Wednesday as well. Been speaking to the public this morning. Reaction really is mixed. Some shouting messages of support. There's been van drivers going past, beeping the vans and waving their arms in support of the members out on strike, but not everyone I've spoken to has been impressed.
Absolutely shocking. Just keeps letting the world down all the time. Letting people travelling, it's disruptive. It puts people, you know, they're ill at ease. Their plans are disrupted. You name it.
I mean, they would say they want better pay, working conditions. You don't agree with that?
Do you really think there aren't more people that are wanting that? I don't think it's actually right at all. We've actually been lucky today, haven't we, Kent? Yeah, we've actually been lucky. It's kind of worked out okay for us, thank God. But, you know, everything seems to be closed. I don't know what's going on. Shops aren't open. When we went to get our tickets, we had to go and do it ourselves, etc., etc. And, you know, and so it goes on. But it's happening more and more, isn't it?
Well, they're pretty frustrated, aren't they? Any sign, Christian, we've got a new Prime Minister in, a new Transport Secretary. Any signals there could be movement in this dispute?
I think that's where there's a difference between this strike that I'm obviously here covering for LBC and ones that I've done before. Previous talk has been well, there's just no light at the end of the tunnel. And I remember when I was covering firefighter strikes about 6 or 7 years ago, that was the constant talk of, well, people saying, well, you know, there is negotiations, things are moving, and that wasn't the case with these. But what you said, Nick, has changed things. The change of government, in particular, the departure of Grant Shapps as Transport Secretary and Anne-Marie Trevelyan taking over. Grant Shapps did not communicate with the unions. That was not how he operated. Whereas Anne-Marie Trevelyan has had communications with the RMT. Now, she said, listen, there's a deal here to be done. The RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch, I spoke to him this morning, he said, listen, there's a long way to go, but the conversations have been warm and been positive. Just the fact that there is a conversation, communication happening is a positive. So a long way to go, but we are hearing more encouraging words from the two sides that we have in recent weeks, and the RMT will ballot its members again in the coming days and weeks to see whether they want to strike again, because this is the last one scheduled. So too early to say if there'll be another one, but things moving in the right direction.
All right, well, let's see how it all pans out. Back to you a little later. Many thanks indeed to Christian Hugel, live for us at London's Euston Station.
LBC News.
Now, it's reported people are still trapped in rubble at the site of an explosion in Ireland. That has now killed, this is the breaking news from police in Ireland, 9 people. Huge explosion here. We knew it was going to be bad, but the extent of it is starting to now surface. Rescuers have been searching through the night and still looking after the blast in County Donegal. Chris McNulty is a journalist who's been covering the story for Donegal Live and says it's hit the community hard.
Well, Creeslough, it's a small village around 20 kilometres from Letterkenny, which is the main town in County Donegal. Creeslough is the gateway to West Donegal, tourist areas like Dunfanaghy, Falcarra, Gweedore. Everyone passes through the village of Creeslough on the way to these areas. It's a very, very close, tight-knit community. And at the time of the explosion on Friday afternoon, schools had just finished at 3 o'clock. The scene, the complex which the explosion happened, it contains the local shop. It's the only shop in the village, the post office, and also an apartment complex. So it's a very, very well-known complex, and you know the people who frequent it on a daily basis would be all well known in the area. The emergency services came from both sides of the border, from the Republic of Ireland and also from Northern Ireland. But as you say, the local community has really rallied around. I mean, the blast was heard for miles away, and you know, buildings nearby had their windows actually shattered. Such was the ferocity of the blast. There were windows in nearby buildings which literally blew off as well. And yeah, look, members of the local community have just really, I suppose, arrived at the scene to stand in solidarity. And many people, even early this morning, coming here to just sort of stand in silent prayer and I suppose hoping for some good news to emanate from the scene.
We'll follow developments very closely. One other story to tell you about today is a development in Ukraine. A bridge linking mainland Russia with the Crimean Peninsula has collapsed after an explosion. This is a vital route for Moscow to get weapons into Ukraine. Yevgeny Popov is United Russia MP for Moscow, says it was a Ukrainian attack.
It is a bridge between two Russian regions, between Crimea and Krasnodarsky Krai. Of course, it was a terrorist attack from Ukrainian government. It is infrastructure for civilians.
They had said it was caused by a truck explosion earlier. That's the official line from the Russians. Those close to the Ukrainian president say it was a big, firm explosion. 12:10.
This is LBC News.
Maybe your stamps are on the table next to the birthday card you forgot to send. Or in that random drawer full of pens, pennies and paper clips. Or stuck to your fridge behind a year-old to-do list and a magnet from Malaga. Or maybe, just maybe, they're neatly placed in a completely sensible spot. After the 31st of January 2023, regular stamps without a barcode will no longer be valid. So if you know where your old ones are, use them up or swap them. For more info, visit royalmail.com/barcoded stamps.
We got it at Selco. Selco is where the trade goes.
At Selco Builders Warehouse, we've got real deals on a wide range of trade quality building products. This month, we've got a 2.44 by 1.2 metre sheet of 18mm general purpose plywood for only £32.95 ex-VAT. Now that's a real deal. Find even more real deals at Selco Builders Warehouse and online at selcobw.com.
We got it at Selco.